Good afternoon, everyone. It is July 8th. Going to talk about the war in Ukraine, give an update on what's going on the battlefield because there has been some movement. Not a lot, but we are watching Russia's summer offensive take place. So there were measurable positive shifts in territory in favor of Russia, but there continues to be major equipment and large personnel losses that show the ongoing attritional approach that Ukraine is taking is largely working. Now, zooming in on where Russia made its biggest gains. They gained roughly 234 square miles of Ukrainian territory, and this was primarily in the line that runs through Donetsk, all the way down through Pokrovsk, Kurakova, and Volodar, though Pokrovsk still is in Ukrainian hands. Now, I say 234 square miles, and that seems like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but we're really only talking about 1/5 the size of the U.S. state of Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the U.S. So 1/5 the size of Rhode Island is not a lot of territory, but it has slightly more movement than we've seen previously from the Russians. They did increase their average frontline depth pace by about 20 meters per day to nearly 60 meters per day, but that's still slower than World War I's 80 meter per day pace. So again, this continues to be one of the slowest moving wars in the history of the world. Now, zooming in specifically on what we are looking at in Pokrovsk region, that is the largest gains in territory for the Russians. This is what the territory looks like today. Now, when we look at about a month ago, this is what it looked like. So you can see there is movement, but not a ton of movement. So as I said, slow going, attritional fight for the Russians. Now, the weekly gains for Russia peaked at about 72 square miles in late June as a part of their summer offensive, but that has dipped a bit in the first part of July. Now, the Russians continue to rely on small-scale infantry assaults and tactical envelopments. Ukraine, meanwhile, continues to hold a very small foothold in and around the Kursk region. It equals about 5 square miles, not a huge amount of territory, obviously, but it is still Ukrainians in Russian territory. And this has largely remained unchanged for the past month as the Russians continue to struggle to dislodge them from their territory. Nonetheless, when you look at what's going on in Sumy, again, not a lot of movement by the Russians over the past month. This is today. This is a month ago. So very, very small gains, not seeing a lot there. And this is because Ukraine's defensive focused posture gives it a leg up in defending its territory, but also limits their ability to recover lost territory within its own borders. And there's no major counteroffensives being reported, largely because of a lack of equipment coming out of the United States. But being in a defensive posture, even with limited equipment, is an advantage, and they continue to inflict maximum Russian casualties while limiting their own. Equipment losses remain heavy, particularly for Russia. Estimates suggest Russia lost between 30 to 50 tanks, as well as 150 to 200 armored fighting vehicles, 500 to 600 artillery systems, and 2,000 to 3,000 drones in June alone. Since February of 2022, when this war started, Russia has lost over 21,700 pieces of equipment, including 12,780 tanks and armored vehicles. Ukraine's equipment losses from the last month include one F-16 and dozens of tanks and armored vehicles. Total Ukrainian losses since the war started is around 7,900 pieces of equipment, which is mitigated by Western aid, though restrictions on using advanced systems like HIMARS on Russian soil does limit the impact Ukraine has on Russia. Now, in the past month, Russia likely suffered between 30 to 35,000 casualties, that is killed, captured, deserted, or wounded. Again, that is just for June, and this is based on the continued daily reports of between 1,000 to 1,100 casualties per day. Total Russian casualties since the war began are just above 1 million, with 250,000 estimated dead and between 750 and 800,000 injured. Ukraine's losses are lower, likely at about 10,000 in June, with cumulative figures since February of 2022 at around 45,000 killed and 390,000 wounded. Now, there are some higher end reports that say that the Ukrainian deaths could be up to 80,000. Either way, being on the defensive with better trained soldiers keeps Ukraine at around a 1-to-3 to 1-to-4 casualty ratio. Now, the fact that Russia is gaining territory means they likely won't stop. The fact that they're losing tens of thousands per month means that they likely will eventually have to stop before reaching any of their ultimate goals, including taking the entirety of Ukraine. That's just not going to happen. I mean, when you see the whole country, I can't even fit it in the whole frame here without yeah, I just can't fit it in the whole frame. There just isn't anything showing that Russia has the capability to reach its goals of completely subjugating Ukraine at this point. Again, this is a month ago. Let's jump to today. So again, this is a month ago. This is today. Not a lot of movement. So with that being said, given Russia's struggles economically, and that is compounding, we continue to hear problems build within the Kremlin as well as the broader Russian countryside outside of just St. Petersburg and Moscow. And that is going to be problematic as time goes on. And as of right now, time is on Ukraine's side, especially since the United States may be looking to deploy defensive weaponry to Ukraine, reestablishing that relationship possibly, at least in a defensive capacity, with Europe focusing on Ukraine's offensive capability.